Hi, everybody. Al Bernstein here with another one of my quick hits. And as you know, sometimes on these quick hits, I like to go back and look at moments in history that are interesting to us. And we call it our flashback on quick hits. And we're going to flash back on this quick hits to October of 1995. So this is the 20th anniversary month of this great fight between Tommy Morrison and Lennox Lewis. It was a heavyweight battle for Lewis's heavyweight title. It was an interesting matchup because, as you see the poster for this fight, with a very young Tommy Morrison and a very young Lennox Lewis, it was a matchup that actually was delayed by a couple of years. They were originally supposed to fight several years earlier when Morrison had won the WBO title from George Foreman, and Lewis also was a heavyweight champion with the WBC. And there was a tremendous appetite for that fight. A $16 million purse was ready to be divided between Tommy Morrison and Lennox Lewis. Each were going to get $8 million. Tommy Morrison had a fight that he had planned prior to this. It was thought to be a keep busy fight, even though he was defending his title, against very little known Michael Bent, who had been a tremendous amateur fighter, but was still in the embryonic stages of his pro career, even had lost a fight, lost his first, I believe his first pro fight. And it was in Morrison's home area. No one expected Michael Bent to win the fight. Michael Bent came out and knocked Tommy Morrison out in the very first round. After Michael Bent had been hurt badly and Morrison attacked him to get him out of there, was careless, Bent knocked him out. That took away Tommy Morrison's $8 million payday. Lennox Lewis subsequently was upset by Oliver McCall, lost his title. Lewis had to win his title back, which he did against McCall, and then a couple years later, finally, it was time for Lewis to fight Tommy Morrison. And they would, in fact, fight on October 7th of 1995. They both got together at the weigh-in for this fight, and this photo reveals a 30-year-old Lennox Lewis and a 26-year-old Tommy Morrison as they got ready for this important fight, a fight that would, Tommy Morrison hoped, would get him the world title, and Lennox Lewis defending in a fight that was, many people thought, a dangerous one for him. Tommy Morrison in the fight came out blazing, was attacking in the early rounds, but felt the sting of Lewis's power early. Then he kept continuing to fight, and the left hook became a weapon that Tommy Morrison would use kind of effectively, and everyone thought that punch might get to Lennox Lewis. And he would use the left hand to claw his way back into this fight as into the fourth round, when he had a very good fourth round, and people thought, okay, Tommy Morrison's power may emerge in this fight. Well, Lewis would come back after that, though, and hurt Morrison, knock him down several times, and finally, in the sixth round, Lennox Lewis used his power to end the fight against Tommy Morrison and knock him out. It was a big victory for Lewis, and for Tommy Morrison, a very difficult setback. It was, in fact, his last major, even though he was only 26 years of age, it was his last major appearance on center stage in the sport of boxing. And, of course, later on, we know he was diagnosed HIV, which cut short his boxing career a bit, and even though he had already kind of left the ring, and then he would move on to do some commentary. And of course, Tommy Morrison has since left us. And I feel a kinship to both of the fighters in this fight. Everyone knows that while I don't play favorites in my commentary of fights, and I try to remain as neutral as possible, I am a big Lennox Lewis fan. I believe he is one of the great heavyweight champions of all time, in the top five for sure, and one of the best ambassadors for the sport of boxing, and one of the great guys you'll ever bump into. and still doing good for the sport of boxing in many ways, including now promoting in Canada. And Tommy Morrison, and I didn't do that many of very few of Lennox Lewis's fights, but covered him for SportsCenter and elsewhere. Now, Tommy Morrison's a different story. Tommy and I knew each other when Tommy was fighting on the ESPN series very early in his career, and that was how he started and began to build his name as a heavyweight. I've also did several of the pay-per-view fights that he was involved with. A great success against Razor Ruddock, and his fight with Ray Mercer, which turned out to be not a success. When he came in guns blazing, was able to just rake Mercer over the coals, but Ray Mercer, who had a great chin, was able to come back and knock Tommy out. So I knew Tommy very well during all that time, did his fights. Like Lennox Lewis, I have a great fondness for Tommy Morrison, and have always will. And the interesting thing is it kind of comes full circle, because now his two sons, Tommy Morrison's sons, Kenzie Morrison and Trey Lip Morrison, are now boxing. And I am broadcasting the fights that they are doing. With Tony Holden, who promoted Tommy Morrison's career, is now promoting to help them move ahead as heavyweights. He is doing so in the Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas area with a group of syndicated shows that involves those two and some other fighters in the area who are excellent fighters. And he's built kind of a team that's kind of a franchise for that area. And the two Morrison boys are fighting in that, and I've been delighted to do their fight. So for me, it's kind of a reliving of history, and as I said, comes full circle. So as we celebrate the 20th anniversary of Lennox Lewis and Tommy Morrison, for me, it has special meaning because of my relationship with both Tommy and with Lennox, and the fact that I am involved now with announcing the fights involving Tommy Morrison's sons, who are, by the way, also delightful young men who also have shown early in their career. Both are undefeated, and both are moving along. Trey especially, I think, has moved. He's a little bit farther advanced. He's a young man with a lot of power, and currently is trained, by the way, by Freddie Roach, who believes in him as a potential heavyweight contender. So we look back at the 20th anniversary of Morrison and Lewis, and look forward to what Tommy Morrison's sons may yet accomplish in the sport of boxing.